Hi, welcome everyone to Art Alchemy. This week we are talking about working in collections.
Yes, because it's something that's come up, isn't it, really?
Is yeah. It came up a few weeks ago, didn't it, in Art Hub, which is our online community for artists, and we were talking about collections, weren't we? But we
Mm.
realised after we talked about it, working in collections, a lot of people didn't even know what we meant by the term.
Yeah, and I think I might have used the term working in series.
Yeah.
And I think what happens sometimes is we think that everybody knows what we're talking about, and we don't actually mean to do that. So yeah, we did think we'd go into why you'd work in series, what working in series or working in collections is,
Yeah.
and um, and the fact that it's much more simple than people perhaps imagine it to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a I think it's a bit of a game changer in terms of making your art as well. I think it helps you become a lot more efficient and focused but at the same time you've got room to explore more things. So we should probably just start off by explaining what we mean by
Yes. Rather than carrying on talking as
um,
we do. We
so
quite enjoy this Friday morning thing, don't we?
we do, it's nice. It's nice and relaxed, isn't it? It's always
Mm.
a chat.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so working in a collection essentially means, for me, and then I'll go to you, Debs, your interpretation, or if you want to add anything to it. You've got several pieces of artwork on the go at the same time. So for me as a painter, I've normally got at least five canvases that I'm working on at the same time, and they're all under a similar theme. So
Mhm.
I'll come up with my own ideas, get inspired and all of that stuff. So when I start the actual painting, I've got a series of artwork that I'm working on, and I'll switch from different canvases to explore that same idea. And we call that a collection in art. So you've got a multiple finished artworks at the end that are based around a particular theme, particular idea.
And the real advantage of working like that, well, there's lots of advantages actually, but is that it's very cohesive at the end. So for the viewer, it's really nice as well because even if you're working on different size canvases, or you can see a thread within that, you can see the connection, and it makes for a very nice look as well, doesn't it? When it's all it's cohesive. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it does because you'll have that common thread in your work that will tie it all together. So you might choose to use the same sort of colour palette. You might choose to explore the same sort of subjects as maybe you're bringing in like portraiture or something into your work that you've not done before.
It could be the same sort of marks or
Yeah.
the same sort of introducing different media. So we'll talk about some examples because that'll make it a little bit clearer. But also, there's other advantages where if you're actually working on one painting, it can become a little bit precious.
Yes, it's very true, isn't it? So if you've got
Mhm.
one thing that you're working on, and also I think, I don't know about you, but my paintings when I'm working in a collection will progress at different rates. And obviously, you always start off at the beginning with artwork, but sometimes one will end up progressing faster than another one. And some days I'm in the mood to do quite detailed finishing touches.
Mhm. Mm.
And other days I'm in the mood to just kind of let loose a bit more and like the beginning stages where you're just kind of starting to bring together ideas and you may be still working out the composition, which can sometimes be a bit more challenging. Whereas like the finishing bits, if you're close to the end, it's just kind of adding in the detail and there's probably not as much thought that needs to go into it. So you've got the option to do kind of both ways of working as well if you've got several pieces on the go at the same time.
And also, if one piece is drying, so you can actually work. Um, Obviously, it's good to have breaks in between your work, but quite often if you can work from one piece and then you're not ready to have a break yet, but you can move to another piece because you're not sure where you're going with that piece. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
helps as well. I think,
literally.
yeah.
And I think the thing is about not being precious is that if you've got a series of, say, 8 paintings on the go, one of them's not working out, you can kind of reinvent that painting, can't you? You can choose to, if you're really not liking it, you can prime over it and start completely again. Or you can just try something different. But you feel like you've got that freedom because you've got more pieces.
And when you actually get do something on one painting and it works, you'll move it to another painting,
That's
that
true.
idea. So it
Yes.
actually develops your ideas. But if you're just doing that on one painting, you've got nowhere to go with it.
Take it. Yeah. Yeah. Because you
Yeah.
might choose to take that one idea and do it slightly differently on another painting.
Yes.
It might be something as simple as like a particular mark that you've made on one painting and you think, I want to replicate that on the other one, but in a different
Yes. And they get like little personalities. It's like when you're writing a story, it's like the series is and the collection is the whole of the story.
yeah.
But you've got all these characters, which are the paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then they have lives of their own really. So they start to sometimes you're and I'd spend a lot of time just looking as well. So you have like and you go, okay, so that one's pulling me to do something. And then
Yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah. And having the different canvases to work on just gives you that space, doesn't it, to like expand
mm,
your ideas and like you say, you can kind of sit back and reflect on them as a themed, group of paint.
mm, mm, yeah, yeah. So I think should we do some examples of what so that, so for example, what series are you working on or have you just finished? Because I think that makes it a lot clearer as well.
Yes, it does. So for me at the moment, the series that I'm working on is it's about change, it's about grief, it's about letting go of things. But in that process, new things opening up and new possibilities opening up. So it's still quite optimistic for something that might be quite a difficult topic to deal with. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I myself at the moment are going through quite a lot of life changes. So
Yes.
I wanted a space to be able to express that and kind of, I suppose, move through that emotion as well.
Mm,
So I mean, my style of painting is normally quite finished, but for this one, it feels a lot more raw, like with the paint marks and with the mark making. Um, and I really wanted to sort of get across that kind of that handmade, that human experience, that experience of like changes in life for me as well is like it's a very human thing, isn't it? And it can feel quite difficult and quite raw and quite exposing. And I wanted to reflect that in what I was doing in the paint as well.
but interestingly, when I'm looking at your painting behind you there, you've got even stronger contrast than sometimes you have. So, and or the differences. What I mean by contrast is not just the darks and lights, but also the like neutrals to the brights. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like out of like what is quite a difficult time,
yeah,
it's actually it's fresh,
yeah,
it's new as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And I can see some of that. That's quite interesting. And but if you had one painting you were trying to do all of that on,
yeah. It will
it's
be
not
much.
easy, is it?
Yeah, no, no, it
It's
will be
not
too
going
much
to.
to try and do. And as well, because I'm exploring a new theme, it helps just to have those different spaces to experiment with, like colour, with marks, with all those sorts of things. So again, it comes down to like not being precious, but being able to like expand your ideas, I think.
Yeah, and I think quite often you'll get like the difficult child as well, the ones that don't really work.
Yeah.
And you're like almost fighting them. So some come really easy, and then some you're like, I can't.
Not
Do you get that as
yeah,
well?
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And but sometimes they can be the best in the end.
Yeah, I actually quite often find the challenging ones can be the best because you have to spend a lot of time kind of problem solving, don't you, and working it out as a painting,
Yes.
which leads to like more kind of thought and consideration. But there's also like this back and forth energy, I think, in it as well. You can kind of feel you can
Yeah. I had one painting that I wouldn't sell it. It's actually very, very unsuccessful as a painting. But it was when I was changing to more abstract.
yeah.
And you could see almost the fight between the realism and the abstraction. It was like, but it's not a good painting. It's like you can see that
Yeah. Yeah.
sort of,
But
yeah,
I think you need to be able to accept that as well, don't you? That you've got to go through that sometimes in order to get to the other side to make something that you like. So like a failed painting sometimes can, well, I think it can be like the best thing that you can do for yourself because then you just move on, don't you?
yeah. And I've sort of kept the painting for me, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's just like because I think when I look at that, come across it, it'll be, oh, that was the point I was really changing over. I know that.
you can
That's
see.
the point of learning, isn't it? You're
Yeah,
really learning.
yeah,
Um, I'm just thinking about, so I'm not in a real painting phase. I'm in I'm getting ready for an open studio. I'm doing all sorts of like, just more like consolidating. But I have got this ongoing project where I'm bringing the poetry into my art, and that's my biggest series that I'm dealing with at the moment. That I'm sort of, but as well as that. I want to go back. I often have a series that I'm working on and one that's in my head that is like, yeah. But what's happened is we've had a lot of florals outside. And so I felt quite overwhelmingly to go back to some of just the plain acrylic because it's very mixed media, my poetry collection one, and just paint for the sake of painting like florals, but loosely. Yeah.
yeah,
And I wanted to explore with the oils on top.
yeah,
So it hasn't actually happened yet, but that's definitely in there. So that's another series. So I've got one that is actually happening and I'm painting, but the other one is brewing.
yeah,
I almost have always have two. One
yeah.
that's going to happen.
Yeah. I also think the good thing about working in collections is that don't you think it what once you've well not even once you've done it, sometimes whilst you're doing it as well, it's inspiring what you want to do next and what you're really interested in. Because as you've got the different paintings to work across a series, you're
Mm.
really kind of thinking about your own art practice, aren't you, whilst you're doing it and the things that you find enjoyable. And you're kind of thinking, well, how can I push this even more? What can I do next?
Mm,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. And sometimes, because this feels a little bit like going backwards because it's back to an older style, but I don't think it is going backwards. I think it's like it's almost like I went from sort of loose to going to quite more realistic, just really as a learning. I think it was a learning curve really. And then
yeah,
I'm coming back to abstraction going this way, and I think that I'm going to settle somewhere in the middle. And I
yeah,
think, yeah,
yeah,
I think that's just my process of learning.
yeah. Just
I tend to work in series for months at a time.
yeah, yeah. That's another thing I suppose to talk about, isn't it? Like,
Mm.
how much of a time limit do you put on your series? Do you put a time limit on it? Do you not? Does it depend on what you're doing? Um, because previously I've done like collections, say like for art fairs in particular,
Mm.
and I've done like smaller paintings just because they tend to sell better. People are more likely to make a instant purchase of something smaller, more affordable. And I've put those together quite quickly, probably because of the size of them. And I just had a couple of quite straightforward ideas about how to use my previous artwork that I've done, but in like a smaller scale. So it probably wasn't stretching me as much like mentally, because it was more for like a commercial kind of basis to give myself some smaller pieces of artwork.
Mm,
So I think it depends, doesn't it, on what you want out of that particular collection.
mm,
So how much time do you want to put into it? And with this collection that I'm doing, I feel like it's going to stretch on longer because I'm
mm,
also planning on using some mixed media over the top of it. So
mm,
that's going to require some experimentation that I'm not going to be doing directly on the painting. I'll be going back to some old canvases and
mm,
having a play with different materials
mm.
before I go to the final pieces.
Yeah,
So I know that's going to take longer because it's doing something new and different, isn't it? And you need to give yourself like time, space.
you do. And I think that because I sometimes play on paper first as well.
Mm,
Things that I do sometimes use later as paintings, but that I'm just experimenting and not putting myself under any pressure at all that it's a painting.
yeah,
Um, and sometimes you do have an idea of where you're going to use them, like if it's an exhibition
yeah,
or when you want to actually finish them for. But I
yeah,
think that just focuses you, really. I think
yeah.
that's like so with the Nature Awakes collection, I did that for March. So that
So you know
was
you've got like a hard deadline for a particular time.
yeah, and the studio was more, I mean, it was absolutely art studio then. So
Yeah,
I laid out. So this is another thing we could talk about the fact that I decided what colours I was going to use. And I think I started in the autumn because I got some autumn paintings that actually have the same colours in them. And I think I was thinking, oh, I'm going to be doing this spring collection, so I will look at these. I think these colours are going to really work for the spring, but they're still part of that collection because they've still got that same feel and the same colours. And I'd started to use some Islamic writing, and that's gone through the collection, sometimes quite subtly, actually. So, and it is and then I also restricted my tools. And then I had everything out here. I sheeted the floor up and everything, and just had all the canvases out. And they were a lot.
yeah,
I think they were quite a lot. I don't mean not five,
yeah,
probably quite a lot of big ones.
yeah,
I can't even think. It's quite a lot. And some of those didn't actually make it to the finish of the collection and will be over painted,
yeah,
but they feed the next collection. They
yeah.
definitely do.
But I think it's important, isn't it, to do that edit after you've finished your artwork and not feel like you've got to have absolutely everything in there
Mm,
and pick your strongest pieces out of that collection that you think
mm,
represent that idea. So you talked about quite a lot there, Debs, in terms of like informing your collection when you start. You talked
mm,
about what color palette you want to use, which you might want to decide at the beginning, or you might want to decide as you go. I think all these things are optional. Kind of depends on how you work, doesn't it?
mm,
Um, for me, it's much more about the idea and really honing into the idea for me before I get started. And then I'll quite often go back to my sketchbook as I'm working and then think about how do I make this idea stronger? Is it a different medium? Is it a different colour? Is it? So I kind of go back and forth, whereas I think you're a lot more like process driven. You'll do one bit at a time.
yeah, I work in stages. I definitely
Yeah.
work in stages.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at a showing stage at the minute, and so everything's sort of like. But it's yeah. Whereas I'll do when I'm in like the preparation experiment, do a huge experimental phase
Yeah.
where, and it's paper. It's a lot of big sheets of paper, lots of, marks and then it depends on what I like as to what moves forward.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes I will go, right, okay, but I am going to experiment with these tools or these, yeah, yeah.
The actual.
So I'm still having difficulty with the um, poetry because I still don't feel like I've got one here actually. Still don't feel like I've started. So it's the collagey bit. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I think I've showed these before, really,
Yeah.
but it's that putting the collage in, but it's the scale because I don't want to be working at. I'll have some at this scale, but I really want to be working big. And it's that scaling up that I'm having difficulty with how I do that with the writing and what I want to do. So it works really brilliant in a sketchbook, and it's the sketchbook that's inspiring me. And I'm still having that. But I have got blank canvases. I've got them.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm going to work as big as say that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be working, yeah, probably 32 inches, something like that.
And sometimes like there's no reason why you can't go smaller again, you know.
I know, but I do
No
want it
reason.
bigger, but I want to have it's almost like I want the hugest of brush strokes and
Yeah.
and that's the thing that I'm trying on a canvas. So because that's what worked in this sketchbook, so it's that scaling up that I'm still working on in my head. And I will do more of these because they're honing in the sort of repeated marks and stuff like that I want. But I do enjoy the playing phase as well, but once you get into the actual painting of it, so it takes months for the playing phase, and then and then I can paint quite quickly once I'm get
Yeah,
going.
you do. You paint much quicker than I do, whereas I've got this little back and forth.
I'll just suddenly go, okay, I'm ready, and then
Yeah,
it's like,
and it will all come out.
yeah, but it takes me months to get there. Yeah, we do it differently, don't we? And that is interesting because if you're listening and you're thinking about painting your own series, or you'll be working differently. So
Yeah,
if you do work in series, then do comment it to tell us what it is that you do.
yeah,
Does it take you ages? Or does it like, to prepare and and then does it all come out at once? Um, or does it is it something that's a lot more thought out and considered on each piece of work? It's quite interesting for us to hear because we might change how we do things sometimes.
yeah. So I find my ideas brew as I'm painting, and then that goes back into the painting and informs that. So it's like kind of two different ways of working, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think that because I think it's the when I'm actually painting at the end, I'm painting quite intuitively.
Yeah,
And I do the looking at it afterwards and trying to assess, but I think that that's why there's so much upfront preparation work
yeah,
type thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Interesting.
if you're wanting to paint in series and you never painted in series, then this might all sound a bit daunting, and it isn't really, because what we're saying is you want to get an idea. In fact, very successful series are just quite small ideas, aren't they?
Yeah, that's another tip, really. Don't try and do too
Too
much
much.
in one, particularly in one painting, because
Yeah.
otherwise it just ends up looking a bit confused. It's
Yeah.
fine just to take an idea and then choose to express it just using a particular medium, a particular colour,
Hmm.
um, and just go with that. Because you can dig really deep, can't you, with art as well?
You can, but you can also overthink if you're not careful. So you could. have an idea that is, I don't know, I'm going to paint the florals like I've done, in my garden sort of thing. And
Yeah.
then it's just, how do I do that perhaps in a more, it's almost like in a more simplified way. What is it that I'm going to get across? How do I get across
Yeah.
feeling of the,
Making that one idea really, really strong, isn't it?
mm,
Like concentrating that idea,
yes,
one thing, and making it, that's the powerful thing, isn't it?
yes.
Yeah.
And so by concentrating on it, often you simplify in it.
Yes.
So ways to do it that are fairly easy, probably not so much for the example that I just made, but simplifying your colour palette. And don't get me wrong, if you find it's not working in the middle of your series, you can add a colour. It's not like, there's no rules, but
Yeah.
it's to help you focus by, and I think limiting your tools or deciding on your tools, because I went bigger with the last, so I had bigger tools. I had trowels and that sort of thing. So you go, okay. And once you've made those decisions and thought about them, then they're there. And yes, you can change your mind and add another tool or whatever. But actually, it's easy because you don't have to think, oh, what am I going to use today on this painting? What colours am I going to? Because they're all there and you just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's meant to be easy, not harder to work in series, do
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I think particularly at the beginning stages, if you're new to all of this, it really helps to narrow down those choices
Mm,
and just go with them because quite often you want to try everything. If you're in the stages of still working out what your voice is, what your style of artwork is, it's really helpful just to go through this process.
mm,
And then at the end of it, you've got something to reflect on as well, haven't you? And you can decide what worked, what doesn't work, what you want to take forward, which parts of it that you enjoyed, which bits you didn't enjoy.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, have you got anything else to add? You have.
The only
You
thing
have.
I'd add is that actually on my website, I've got a guide to finding your own voice, which I think you've got something similar, haven't you,
Yeah,
Debs? And
yeah,
they both go through step by step um, guides. And it's really about working in collections, isn't it? When you think about it, that's the way that we've designed the guides. But it takes you through the important parts as well, things like tapping into your intuition, making choices on what materials you want to use,
yeah.
and then like creating your own mini projects, and
Mm,
then starting that cycle all over again. Because that's what it takes, really, doesn't it, to find your own voice, is to keep working in collections, keep going, and that's the way you develop, isn't it?
yeah, and I'd also say there is something really satisfying about when you finish a collection because it surprises you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
If you put them together and you go, oh yeah, they do really, really go
yeah,
together.
yeah,
And what I find is amazing. Oh, I know, the end of a collection. So at the end of the collection, the titles start to come. That's like really interesting, isn't it? Because you're like, it's like they've grown up and they form their own little personalities. And then you're like, okay, so what should I call you?
yeah.
Yeah, and I sit quietly. I've got a settee here, and I sit and I'll look at them and I go, hmm. I spend quite a lot of time and then it'll all start to come.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, what to call them.
yeah.
Hmm. And that's the end of the collection then.
Yeah, and that
Oh,
well, and then you've got all of the stuff that you have to do afterwards, the photography, the uploading it
oh,
to
and the varnishing and all of that. Yeah, yeah, we've got all that. Yeah, yeah.
probably another episode.
I think so. Yeah. And I think on that note, I think we've come to the end of the series or the collection today.
Yeah. Yeah, let us know what you think. It'd be lovely to hear your comments and any ideas that you've got about anything that you want us to cover in the podcast as well. We're always open to discussing anything that you've got on your mind that you're thinking about.
Yeah, and you can pick our freebies up on our websites, but also we'll put a link below to our own on our own channels, our own freebies. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right. See you
So
soon.
yeah, see you soon. Bye for now.